Hope everyone had a good week. I am now going to begin the roll call. After the roll call, I have a presentation. I'm not sure how long it will take. So if everyone will be attentive, it will be on share. And then after the presentation, if you adopt the, if you want to adopt this report, you can put a motion in to adopt this report. So I'm gonna do roll call. Jeremy Roca.
Present.
Gerald Taki.
Takano present.
David Bland.
Present.
Sean Ingram.
Present.
Genevieve Sims.
Present.
Greer Webb.
Present.
Deontay Thomas. And Johnny Thomas. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is approve of the Police Advisory Board agenda.
So moved.
Anybody second?
Second.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, David. All in favor, just raise your hands. Agenda's passed for March 24th, 2021. The approval of the minutes from previous meeting, February the 24th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Do I have
Madam
a
Chair,
second?
before we approve them, may we visit about cleaning them up, or should we do that a later time?
They
you have
should
to
have
have
been
the
clean.
motion.
You should have
Say
got a
again, ma'am?
clean copy.
Okay.
Jeremy, did you get a clean copy?
I did, but I read through them and there's some, yeah, if we want to move forward with approving them, we can go ahead and do that.
David?
We have to have a motion and a second and then discussion. And if, Jeremy, if you have issues relative to the minutes, corrections, then you bring them up now.
Jeremy, what part of the minutes that you had questions on?
For example, begin on the staff liaison report, beginning with Dr. Caesar on the third paragraph. It's just grammatic. Do we care about grammatical error, or should we just let that slip?
I would suggest, just in terms of our issue of timing tonight, that any grammatical error, you just send an email to Sheila and she can, or Dr. Caesar or somebody, and they can correct that. I wouldn't waste our time on grammar.
It's all grammatic errors, Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Nothing substantial.
Okay, just send me what you have on grammatical errors. And
Yes, ma'am.
I do the corrections and then send it to Dr. Caesar to make sure.
I can do that.
Okay.
I apologize, Madam Chair.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you for correcting that. Okay. Those in favor for approval of the previous meeting, February 24th. I had a motion to approve and second. All in favor, raise your hands. So moved and approved, and we will get the grammatical errors out the way. Johnny has just joined us. Johnny Thomas. I can see him, but I can see his name, but I can't hear him. So this presentation tonight, you ready, Dr. Greer? Yeah, Dr. Caesar. I'm sorry, Dr. Greer. I'm sorry.
I'm just through undergrad first. I'm gonna let the doctors have that designation.
Okay. I'm getting ready to read my presentation. And if we have enough time to, for any other comments, we would go to them, but first let me read it. Once I read this presentation, then the panel can vote on, do they want to adopt this report? In March 10th article on WRL.com, Mayor Mary Ann Baldwin said, "We, referring to the city council, had work to do, and the board, referring to the police advisory board, was appointed to help us do that work. We want them to influence policy. Sometimes the best advice is the advice you don't want to hear, but that could make the difference, and that is their job." Last year, Mayor Baldwin allowed Councilor Jonathan Melton to write a letter to the state Senate requesting police oversight or subpoena power for the board. To date, there has been no word from Senate concerning this request. This issue was also added to the City Council's 2021 legislative priority agenda. I want to remind the board members of what I wrote to you all in my November 25th, 2020 email. So let us make the most of the opportunity we have been given and recognize the power we have been granted and use it to the fullest extent. As I have said to you before, policy is a powerful tool because the power of policy making is the foundation upon which our laws are made and amended. Now, next, I want to review a couple of things from the February meeting. I wanted to first talk about Major Vessel's presentation on policy 1107-02, response to disasters. On page 15 of the consultant 21 CP's report, policy number 1107-02 was indirectly cited recommendation 8, which stated RPD should develop a standalone mass detention and arrest policy. The comment on this recommendation stated, in part, that the RPD should develop clear policy guidance as to when officers managing crowd and protest situations can make mass arrests. The policy should, among other things, detail how arrest teams will engage with protesters subject to arrest and how those arrests will be booked. Given the scope of legal and logistical implications surrounding mass arrest and a protest situation, RPD would be well suited to craft a detailed policy addressing these issues. The response to this recommendation that is found on page 6 states, in part, civil disorder, jail emergencies, and mass arrests are currently being drafted into a standalone policy. Input is being sought from personnel who are involved in planning the RPD's response to these events. Additional input will be sought from the Police Advisory Board. Under each recommendation, response are the statutes, implementation date, and completion date. The cover page of the departmental response states, accordingly, the response indicate a specific period of implementation and date of completion. Intermediate, 30 to 40 days in implementation. Intermediate, 41 to 60 day implementation, and long-term 61 to 90 day implementation. In the case of recommendation 8, the status is intermediate with an implementation date of January 1, 2021 and completion date of March 1, 2021. Here's my problem with this. The definition of implementation is the process of putting a decision or plan into effect. That means that the implementation process for the update to 1107-02 and the the creation of a standalone policy occurred between January 1 and March 1st. Contrary to what was written in the response, which is a public document, at no time during that 41 to 60-day implementation process period was this board invited to give its input into creation of the new policy. Also, the new policy that the chief's office claimed was currently being drafted was not cited in Major Vessel's presentation, nor was it publicly posted on the city's website as of March 15th, when I printed a copy of policy 1107-02. Understandably, this policy still shows an effective date of January 2nd, 2014. All of this leads me to believe that the standalone policy has in fact not been done, although there is a completion date of March 1st, 2021. So much for transparency. In addition to this overview of policy 1107-02, we were given an overview of DOI 1108-01, use of force and weapons. What is interesting is the connection made between these two policies and the Raleigh and RPD's response to the recommendation. Although policy 1108-01, use of force and weapons, is not referenced by number, it is the one that recommendation 9 is referring to. The recommendations state that the RPD should develop more specific policy guidance on the use of force in crowd contexts. RPD should clarify and retrain commanders on when and how to authorize deployment of special munitions. The police department's response in part states policy guidance on use of force in crowd and protest context was already included in DOI 1107-02, response to disasters, and is being refined and included in response to recommendation 8. The status for recommendation 9 in the response is also intermediate. The implementation date is also January 1, 2021, and the completion date is also March 1st, 2021. And you guessed it, the Police Advisory Board was not invited to give additional input in the review and update of this policy either. Also, the refining of this policy was done between January 1st until its completion date on March 1st. And this policy too has not been updated on the city's publicly accessible website. Also notable is that in the consultant's recommendation and or the department's response, these and other policies required revisions because more details were needed. On November the 30th, 2020, the board requested a copy of policy 1109-21, special events and dignitary security. We were told that the general statute prohibited the public from seeing this policy. For months, we asked to see a redacted copy of the policy, which would darken or hide the sensitive information concerning details of security plans and arrangements. The general statute was the go-to used to block our attempts to see this policy that could not be divided because it was a whole policy, a single unit in the departmental operating instructions. The question was raised on more than one occasion as to whether 21 CP Solutions had been given access to any of the non-public policies while completing their assessment of the after action report. Time after time, this question was either not answered or evaded. It had been something of a cat and mouse game that had run its course. It was time to table this matter and move on. And this we would have done had the transparency in the number of 21 CP recommendations and the number of recommendations in the RPD's response to the consultant's report had matched, but they did not. And that stirred my curiosity, which led me to go back to my copy of the 21CP report and count each recommendation. I found the problem was in numbering 2 of the recommendations with the same number. In my search for the numbering error, I came across something most interesting. Allow me to read of it to you. This policy sets the responsibility for completing and submitting on after action report with the Special Operations Division commander and designee. The policy describes the content of these reports. The report is to be submitted to the chief of police. The policy referred to here is 1109-21, Special Events and Dignitary Security. This is found in Section 7, After Action Reports, on page 39 of the consultant report. So let me make this perfectly clear. 21CP Solutions was the external consultant firm hired to do an assessment of the after action report of the events that occurred last year on May 30th and 31st, who were allowed to see Raleigh Police Department policy 1109-21, which was forbidden, off limits for review by the public because of the general statute. In the background information on after action reports, the consultant wrote, an after action report, or AAR, is a process in which, following a project or event, an organization and its members gather to share insight and identify mistakes and successes. This should be a team-based process that encourages participants to reflect on what happened, offer their observation and perceptions about the event, identify both promising practices and lesson learned. The AAR process is a learning opportunity for the organization and can provide suggestions to leadership, policymakers, and others for change, page 38. In the last paragraph of the background, the consultant concluded, for action assessments to be beneficial, the learning loop must be closed by ensuring promising practices and lessons learned are reflected in future plans, procedures, and policies. It is through learning from experience and teaching these learnings that a police department can improve training, enhance safety measures, and positively impact response and practices, page 38 and 39. It was interesting to note in recommendation 30 on page 43 that 21CP acknowledged that RPD reviewed a good amount of data and information and released a public report in a related to quick manner. Yet the after action report was nearly 50-page document that include reports from a variety of internal and external department sources. The 21CP solution report was about as long as the after action report. The consultant also reported that they reviewed several after action reports prepared by the Raleigh Police Department. All of these reports followed the basic structure outlined in the policy 1109-21 and were completed by the Special Operations Division. They varied in length from 1 to 5 pages, page 40. Among the 5 reports the consultant were given were the 2015 after action report, El Pablo protest, and the after action report on the NAACP mass moral Monday March for HK on J in 2016. A major problem that 21CP found with the after action report on the 2020 protests and riots was a lack of inclusion from other stakeholders in the after action process. The consultant wrote that identifying a comprehensive list of stockholders to engage throughout the AAR process is critical. Among the list of possible stockholders that should be included were mutual aid or co-responders, elected officials, and community or non-governmental organizations. The consultant went on to write who and the depth of a review will depend on the number of actors involved in the action and the impact the action had on the community. It is important that AARs not be conducted in a vacuum. Page 43, 42. The consultant explained why the AAR review process should be inclusive. Given the public nature of this event, RPD could have contacted community, non-governmental organizations, or businesses to get additional insight. It is accepted that being different perspectives into the AAR offer challenges, but we believe the benefit both in understanding how the event evolved and setting the stage for police and others to work together to improve future response to similar events is worth the effort. Page 42. This was a missed opportunity for the police department to start building a relationship with the community. Remember, an after action report, or AAR, is an assessment of what happened and the lessons learned from the event. If the AAR is a learning opportunity, when there has to be a plan to implement those lessons learned. A corrective action is the first step of translating learnings into actions. Such a plan identifies the actions necessary to implement the recommendation and assign each action to a person responsible for taking the action and the time frame in which the action is to be completed. Page 43. Corrective action report is the formal name for the response to the 21 CP recommendations, or a memo on December 11th, as is the title on the update RPD's response to 21 CP. Recommendations webpage on the City of Raleigh's website, 21 CP Solutions, made 6 recommendations. Numbers 30 to 35 on page 43 to 45, based on this policy 1109-21 concerning the May 30th and 31st events in the Raleigh Police Department's after action report. The response to recommendation 30 seems rather shallow and was not convincing that the RPD is interested in changing its attitude towards including external stockholders in such discussions as the after action review process. With all this in mind, we, the representative of Raleigh community, having been appointed by the mayor and city council, are not asking, but demanding, 1, to be involved in all police policy changes as cited in the 39 recommendations in the 21 CP Solutions report. 2, since 21 CP is a public firm and they were given copies of documents that were not available for the public to review, we also want exactly everything they got by April 7. And 3, after reading department's response to that recommendation 35, I came away wondering why 1109-21 special events and dignitary security was covered by a North Carolina general statute. However, if there is a commingling of the after action report guidelines with security plans and agreements, then the after action report guidelines need a standalone policy. And the other 9 policies prohibit to the public also need to be reviewed, and anything not related to the policy and or not covered by the general statute needs to be taken out of the policy and made a standalone policy. All of this needs to be done immediately, posted to the website. This also includes any and all updates to police policies marked with the completion date or simply marked completed in the RPD's memo on December the 11th or corrective action report. Without presuming for anyone else, I concluded that 21 CP likely saw that the Raleigh Police Department operated and functioning in isolation rather than as part of the whole city government system and the community. And this antiquated cliche or antiquated or old cliche culture of policing would never be able to be an example of 21st century policing that would take the opportunity to grow further in a relentless pursuit of excellence. Until that culture changes, it will be what it always has been. Now, Police Advisory Board, let's exercise our influence, and in the words of the late Congressman John Lewis, see something, say something, do something. This is conclude my presentation. Board, would you like to adopt this report?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think you have done a superb synopsis of what all of us have felt, and it's my honor to move we adopt it.
I second that motion.
All in favor,
Aye.
raise your hand. We are now adopted. I will make some changes on it. Instead of putting I will put the Police Advisory Board. And then I will send it Dr. Caesar. And when I send it Dr. Caesar, then I can send it back out to you all as the Police Advisory Board. So once I do that order of business doing corrections, I will send you all a copy and send Dr. Caesar to put it on our webpage.
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Yes, David.
because you did such an extensive and comprehensive job, I think that it might be wise for you to appoint a subcommittee or somebody to take your draft report and start specifically outlining what the X number of steps are that you had the 3 things that you demanded, but I think that there are a lot of other things in that report that you did that really we need to highlight as actionable items. And I'm just thinking maybe that would be a productive thing. I'd like to hear others comment.
Well, what I can do is give it to the policy and procedure team, and that's what we got them for, is to take a look at it and go through it. But my first order of business is get a corrective order since we adopt it as a team to make sure that it is instead of my name or anything that I did, it would be the board's work. That's the first order of business.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Sure.
Madam Chair, I want to be very clear as to what David's recommendation is. I understand that you're saying that you would like to refer it to the Policies and Procedures Committee, but I'd like the committee to be very clear as to what it is that David is recommending. So I would ask that he repeat that.
Repeat,
sure.
David.
Yes.
Repeat what you were suggesting, David. That's what I was asking.
Certainly. The chair has enumerated a number of issues in that report over and above the 3 demands that she made at the end of it. And so they can become actionable items on their own, I would suggest that we go through it, pull those out, convert them to actionable statements so that this board is saying to the community, here are our demands, those three things, but here are areas that we feel absolutely must be addressed by the RPD operationally now.
Greer,
Thank you, David.
Greer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a note, could the full board also be sent to this soon, just so we can have it for our record?
You will be. I definitely make sure I make my changes tonight, first thing in the morning, so I can send it out to the full board. I'll make sure the full board get it. I spent almost 2 weeks while everybody was doing everything else. It was a lot of reading, a lot of making sure that everything was quoted correctly. So definitely, I will make sure you will get it out expeditedly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment as well to reemphasize, thank you for the time that you put into that report. As you know, it's just served to reiterate much of what we've been talking about for these many months. And so as we were appointed by the city to represent the community, just those 2 points that I wanted to highlight that I thank you for emphasizing when it comes to those 3 demands was, number one, that 21CP could see, and this was asked in our February meeting, the policies that we were told were not made public. And so we asked this very question, I'm sure my fellow board members remember, was 21CP Solutions able to see the policies that we were being told by the general statute, which we still haven't really been cited by the city attorney, as members of the public. And we were told by the city attorney and the police attorney, I have the transcript of the meeting here, that they could not tell us if that was true or not. And so after some really in-depth research on your part, Madam Chair, and some weaving through the uncertainty, we found the answer ourselves. So I think that needs to be noted first and foremost. Secondly, I think the progression of this board, even with our limited powers, is something to definitely praise. But 21CP Solutions acknowledged that the city of Raleigh did not consult the community after a community-driven protest that sparked both the after action report and the 21CP Solutions report on the Raleigh Police Department. And so that's very striking, troubling, something that many of us on this board assumed, and something that we really need to address as we look at a new police chief coming in, and as we look to really hold accountable a police department that doesn't seem, and a city at that really doesn't seem like they want to talk to the community about issues that directly impacted them. So thank you for giving me that time, and thanks for your research.
Thank you. Johnny?
Yes, ma'am. Board, listen, I've been listening to all of this, and I support the Madam Chair, and I like the report, and I understand it. As I said, there's something going on now. Riots are once, twice a year, okay? So you can deal with that. But every single day, there are stops and searches that are being done by Raleigh Police Department that is picking up. Now, I don't know what's the cause of it, but it's something that's been picking up. And I'm just asking, can we really take a look at this? Because what happened a few months ago, okay. But I want to address something that's happened yesterday, happened today, it's going to happen tomorrow. That is right now more important to me, what's happening now. And these stop and searches and what people getting arrested through them, that's turning into a big issue for me personally, and I hope that is something that everybody else is willing to look at. I'm asking that in your report or anything you submit to City Council, can we find out what is their policies, why is this starting to happen at a higher rate, and why is it starting to happen more in colors of community, and what's going on? Thank you.
And what I would do, Johnny, I will send a request or a note up. I'll draft something up, and Dr. Caesar, and send it to you just to ask the question. Gerald, thank you, Johnny.
Yes, I understand that our communication efforts with the city have not been the smoothest, but I think it's important that I do remember the statements made regarding what Greer said about the 2 steps he's talking about there. As I remember, the police attorney or the city attorney said that they did not know, could not answer, and whether or not that those policies were provided to 21CP, and that was an answer for the chief to be presented to, because they did not know whether the policies were given to her by her or others. They just know that that it did come through the city attorney's office. And as far as the other one, I believe the 21CP solution, that was a recommendation for future incidents that did not occur from their investigation at the time, that the outside community entities that they recommended, which I do agree with, were not consulted. And that was a criticism of the current practices at the time. And they're recommending that in the future, they should include entities like this board in those areas that they recommended before. So I just kind of wanted to, that's what I recommend. That's what I remember from the meeting and from the reading of the particular items that were brought up.
Thank you, Gerald. Ms. Sims?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to address something that we've talked about, and I think I wish Deontay was here tonight, because I think he could be very clear about this. But I believe that the general statute that says that we cannot have access to certain policies or portions of policies is found in North Carolina General Statute 132-1.4 uppercase A. And so for those of you who are interested in where is that, that is the statute that I believe addresses it. And I think that, Madam Chair, you've looked at that statute before and possibly discussed it.
I did.
And I said, as I said, Deontay is a criminal lawyer. I'm not a criminal lawyer. And so he would be able to give us more specifics on that. But I believe that we each should look at 132-1.4A.
That is correct. Deontay and I looked at that policy together, and you're correct, 132. And I didn't really get too much into it. Deontay and I supposed to got back together about finish looking at that policy, but you're absolutely correct. 132 1.4A was one of the ones that him and I discussed. So he's not here, he's at work, so he's tied up, but we will get back to that. I think that Miss Genevieve, what we can do is the policy team, I think you're now on it and Gerald is on it, that we can get with him to look at that policy more carefully and closely. Any more questions? Because what we're going to do now is move on to the next item of business, because time is getting away from us, and that is to nominate our vice chair. And my recommendation, I want to nominate Ms. Genevieve Sims as vice chair. Do I have any?
I second that nomination.
All in favor, just raise your hand. Okay, Ms. Genevieve, you're now vice chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My second nomination is the secretary, which I am nominating Jeremy Roca as secretary.
Second.
Okay, all in favor for Jerry Roca to be secretary, raise your hands.
Thank you.
Jeremy, you're now secretary. We thank you both for filling these spots. We have a lot of work to do now at this point, since we have something to really get our teeth involved in. So now we really, and David, thank you for bringing out some of those points, and I will make sure that I get this copy out very swiftly, and we can start doing the work we need to do and put a little more pressure. David, you're muted, David.
I'm terribly sorry. I didn't want to confuse, so, okay, I'm back. I'd like to put on the table a couple of things that I'm not sure that we just write an email and say, what are you doing or what? But first of all, I think that the board should take a position on Senate Bill 100. I sent you all information about that. Number two, I think we need to specifically ask the RPD what they're doing in preparation, and we want to know what they're doing in preparation for the post-George Floyd trial. If we don't think there's not going to be some fallout from that, the Pope isn't Catholic. And the third thing is, I think we need to get an affirmative statement from somebody as to the status of the seeking of the new police chief. Now, I know we were told that they weren't going to define it until they had a better idea of who it might be. That's crazy. They know dadgum well what they are looking for a police chief now. Or they wouldn't be out hunting. I think we need to know what it is they're looking for. And if we don't agree with it, we ought to put it on the table.
In agreement with the police chief, I spoke with, I sent an email with Dr. Caesar, and she's going to give a report about who's next in line, who's going to be the interim chief, why they're looking for a chief. So I'm hoping this week we'll be able to get more information. I agree, we do need to start finding out what is going on about looking or searching for a next chief of police. Time is ticking, and I think we need to go ahead and try to, if we're going to be involved in the process, they need to let us be involved in the process. I see right now we have not been involved in the process of the policies and some of the things that happen. So I think we need to be involved in the process. They say we're going to be involved in the process. Let us be involved in the process. So I think now is time for us to start being involved in the process.
Hear, hear.
Gerald, did you have something?
Yes, your point two is, I believe, according to the paper reports, is that the Chief Deck Brown will be staying on as interim in the interim until further notice. That was just from what the papers reported that I know of. On that last part there, as far as participation in the selection, I would make a motion that you have a committee that would be proactive in trying to, I guess, determine in what form the board would play, and suggestions to it, and be proactive as opposed to reactive, as this process is coming probably very close, if not get ready to open up soon.
I am in agreement with you. Since you're saying let's do a committee of chief of police, I am totally in agreement. So I am asking volunteers who wants to be on that particular search.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I interject here?
Sure.
Two clarifying points before we vote on any motion. I believe Gerald was saying that he had read in the papers, and then you mentioned maybe a conversation that you or something Dr. Caesar had said. Do we know who is going to be? I guess you're saying that there will be an interim police chief, starting April 1st or sometime until they choose the next police chief. Do we know who that person is?
Dr. Caesar?
Yes, so there will not be an interim that I have been informed of. Police Chief Deck Brown will stay on until the new chief is appointed.
That's what the paper said.
Of having a search firm, and until they identify the firm and start the selection process, Chief Deck Brown will remain, I guess, in her current status.
And is there any project, and excuse me, David, you're right, that is what the paper stated. Is there any projected date for a new police chief or for the hard start of that search firm?
No, not at this time.
Okay, and secondly, I was just going to comment on Gerald's I guess motion, if he was making that. I think that, again, as Ms. Sims said earlier, we need to be clear as to that committee. I want to make sure that we are being very thoughtful and not just forming, so many committees. Whereas if we're going to look or be hopefully in the future talking with the potential nominees for chief of police, I believe that's something that the whole board needs to be a part of. And so I want to make sure we're not limiting ourselves to only allowing a select number of the which I guess will become non-member board at some point in the future, to speak with that person or those people.
Ms. Genevieve?
Madam Chair, if I could just clarify, my
Sure.
understanding is that what has been represented to us up to this point in time by various individuals is that we will be involved in the what we term the community engagement process of determining the skills and traits that we want the new chief to possess. And so I was understanding Gerald's motion to be one that doesn't exclude the entire board, but simply one that moves us toward developing those skills and traits that we as a board would like to see in a chief. But that still does not take us out of the engagement in the selection of the new chief. If I misunderstood you, Gerald, please correct me.
No, you're correct. You just said it more eloquently.
Sean? Hold on a minute, David. Sean?
Yeah, because I just wanted to confirm also, because I was thinking that the last meeting we said that we was actually going to put together some questions as individuals. And that's one thing I do like about this board. We're different individuals, different backgrounds, different thought processes. So having our own individual questions and then bringing them all together in a sense to have a template of what we're looking for, what our expectations of the new police chief should be. I thought that's what we kind of said in the last meeting also, and I kind of agree with Greer. I think when you start creating all these subcommittees, it takes away from the total idea of the entire board. So I just want to also just make sure that the entire board isn't excluded from the process of what the idea of what our new police chief should be based off of past and what we want for present.
Well said.
So,
But
go ahead, David.
I think, Sean, you said it well. My only point would be that some 1, 2, or 3 individuals are going to really need to summarize what all 9 of us put forth, so that then the board has got a workable document from which to make its final decision. So I would suggest that maybe Gerald amend his motion to say that the board within the next week or whatever you say will put forth the criteria which we think are critical for this new chief, that we send it to a subcommittee appointed by our task force, appointed by the chair, which would then summarize it and get it back to the full board for final action.
Greer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo David's motion and to state that this is a critical and crucial matter. So I want to make sure that we give ourselves a timeline here as well. Since we're being told that we're not certain when they are going to name the new police chief, I don't want that to inhibit us. And I think we need to have what we believe, the community to want when it comes to traits of the new police chief on our own timeline, so that when the hiring process is announced, we can go and say, here is what we have already compiled, and we want to be involved in that conversation. And we've been promised, on March 24th that we will be involved in that conversation. So I think timeline for ourselves is important. So I'd agree with what David is saying. That committee may be necessary to bring back traits and to solicit the opinions of every board member, but to kind of compile them in a document that would then be presented to the full board.
So what I'm hearing is go ahead and do maybe 2 or 3 people to do traits of what we are looking for in a police chief to bring it back to the board. correct, Greer? Is that what you're saying?
I believe so. If that's what, or could you state that last part one more time? I don't think that's what David was saying.
No,
What-
I had suggested that we garner ideas from all of the board members. And
Okay,
that those ideas come to 2 or 3 people that you pick,
okay,
summarize them, and then it goes back to the board for a decision.
okay, okay,
Madam Chair, if I could,
sure.
can I take all of that and put it into one little motion? If
Yes.
Gerald withdraw his motion that didn't have a second, David's motion didn't have a second, and so neither one of those are appropriate. So if I could put one concise motion together
Sure,
to
go
put all
ahead.
of everybody's thoughts together. By March the 31st, I would move that by March 31st, every member of the board submit to the chair questions, concerns, issues related to the traits that he or she would like to see in a new chief. The chair then takes that information and submits it to a subcommittee, selected whomever or composed of volunteers or whomever, to come back to the board with suggested traits, skills, abilities for the new chief.
Second,
Greer?
I just had a comment, so I don't know what the proper process is. Is it to second and then have conversation?
Yeah,
yes. Seconded,
okay, Greer.
I want to make sure, and this was also in our work plan that I believe is going to be presented to council, that we are soliciting input on this very issue from the public. Of course, we're all members of the public, but I want to make sure that, or have the discussion now, how are we making sure that what we are putting forth is an accurate representation of what the public wants in the new police chief? How are we going to give them the avenue to give their input, as opposed to just speaking for them? And I believe that's something that our community engagement, or if that's not the correct title, that committee was looking at for the work plan. So can we make sure that they, have a specific, say in how we're going to solicit information on this issue from the public?
Go ahead, Ms. Genevieve.
Madam, I apologize, but again, my understanding from all that was represented to us last month and in February was that organizations, community organizations will also be a part of the community engagement process. So organizations do not have to come through us with whatever concerns they may have, but they will have their engagement. So any organization out there that is interested in being involved in this process makes itself known and is involved in the community engagement process.
Greer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up on, firstly, I'm not sure the city has a great track record of following through on what it said it's going to do when it comes to community engagement. That's A. B, I'm speaking, Ms. Sims, just about individuals in the community that may want to give their input. Where is the channel? Will there be a website for them to do so that, where they don't have to go out and label themselves as an organization? And on top of that, what is our role in that? Because our charge is to gather that input from just community members, not necessarily organizations, and then present that to the police department and the city. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that.
Greer, the community engagement piece, that we have a committee of community engagement, that community engagement piece can also do the reach out to the community. Once we gather, the board gather their questions or what they're looking at, what Genevieve said, Ms. Sims said, then once that happens, the community engagement begins with the community committee. Dr. Caesar?
Yes, and as you all are pulling your questions together, I want to offer you guys a tool or a resource that you can use. The city has public input software, so we could actually create a page dedicated to your survey. So if you want to ask the community questions, we can create that and create a site just for that.
that would be great.
Sean, last question. And then we're gonna go with this motion. Last question.
No, actually, Dr. Caesar just answered my question because I 100% agree with Greer. Like, if we're going to be I mean, because I know that's the committee that I'm on, and that is my role and responsibility. But I can't, you know, and honestly do my job if I don't understand the questions from the community. So that was my question. Can we have something on our website or a website where community can actually give their inputs, and then that way, as a board, we can take those in and express those in whatever way we see fit. But we definitely need an outlet that the community can also share their input.
And that's
Thank you, Dr. Caesar.
the Community Engagement Committee can get with Dr. Caesar on that software where to add to our webpage so the community can get their input in.
Dr. Caesar, could you send us what that looks like so we at least have it in our brain?
Yes, so when our website is operational, I can send you a link to an example of what it would look like.
Thank you.
We have it for our BRT project. So it would be the same as that, except we would change the images and the information on the site.
Great.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor what Ms. Genevieve said, let's raise our hands. Okay, so carried out. That's we're at 8 o'clock, and that's the order of business for tonight. Dr. Caesar, did you have one more thing? She has a report.
Yes, two things, and I'll be really quick. One is that because we lost 2 members, we have to replace those 2 members. So the folks who are currently serving as alternates, Johnny Thomas and Deontay Thomas, will become full voting members at your next meeting. City Council will address the vacancies for the alternate positions in their, in standard business, probably at the next, if not the next, the meeting immediately following their council meeting, they'll address the alternates.
Okay. Greer,
Is it a
question? Wait a minute, David.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is either for you, Madam Chair, or Dr. Caesar. The 2 women that left the board filled the mental health advocate and legal representation slots. So if we're going to have Deontay and Johnny become the full board members, what is going to happen? I believe Deontay's an attorney, so I'm not sure if he'd be able to fill that spot, but what will happen to the specific mental health advocate slot?
So City Council will look at the applications and they will backfill those slots. So if Deontay can satisfy the attorney requirement, then we'll have to backfill one of the alternate positions with a mental health provider.
Thank you all. Greer, you have another one, or you finished?
No, I just wanted to clarify. So are you saying, Dr. Caesar, that it could be that the mental health advocate is an alternate and that person is not a full member of the board?
That is correct. The alternate still attends all meetings, still contributes, but when it comes to voting, alternates are not allowed to vote.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, I don't know if a motion is appropriate here or not, but I think there needs to be further communication with the city, because I believe the city's intention was to have these specific designated slots, including the LGBTQ representative, legal, mental health, et cetera, be full members of the board and be able to vote and represent that community fully. And so I am a bit troubled if we're going to say that now, because of these resignations, that the mental health advocate is not going to become a full-time voting member.
Greer, what I have to do is probably get up with Dr. Caesar and get a clarity on how that mental health position will be filled. Okay, so let me get a clarity. Let me get with Dr. Caesar and send a request up just to see how that particular slot is going to be filled in, or is it going to still be a alternate position. I thank you all today. I appreciate all of you. We got work to do. We got a lot of things coming up, and we need to do a lot of things. After this report and this revision, I feel that what I've read and what I've seen in all reports, and I read every line by line report, that we have a lot of work to do at this point, and we have to do it cooperative and collectively. So we have to be one sound and one voice. in this board. So thank you all, and y'all have a good night.
Thank you very
All
much,
right,
Madam
everybody.
Chair.
You welcome.